And welcome once again to the decline of wrestling civilization here on LuchaCentral.com. I am your host of hosts, bringing you the horrors of wrestling, Joe Martel. Joining me once again, the famous Eric Mutter, the cult icon. Say hello, Oilers fan.
Yes. Oh God. Now you're making me an Oilers fan here. I own all the hats. Well, not all of them, but most of them, and I have another one on the way, according to my sources. Another one on the way for Christmas, but I won't tell the people which one. We have to leave them in suspense.
Of course.
Until whatever day is after Christmas when we do the show.
Well, that'd be Boxing Day here in Canada, but
actually,
no, that's the day after Christmas. Yeah, the Tuesday after Christmas. Yeah,
it's a Canadian hat, so it works out that way too.
Fair point.
Yeah. There we go.
I don't have any other Canadian connections to segue into anything other than there's a big Canadian in wrestling news this week. He's challenging for a huge title in the AEW world. Winnipeg's own Kenny Omega is going to be headlining Dynamite this weekend. I might not be the biggest Dynamite fan on the planet, but there's hardly anything else that's comparing what the buzz is for Dynamite this week with the huge title match. I know you are uber pumped for it.
Oh, man.
Why don't I just pull the cord and let you go nuts? What's going on with Dynamite, starting with that huge title match?
All right. Well, first, let's run down the show, which, as I described to you before we went on the air, was Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley, and 4 matches that are very happy to be on the same card as Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley.
Yeah, it's pretty much guaranteed that whatever match does take place, they're going to be in front of 1 million viewers. It's going to be really hard to imagine AEW doesn't beat 1 million for this show.
We'll get into that later, but I think you might be right. So the rest of the card is Cody Rhodes. He is now Cody Rhodes. Remember, people, not just Cody anymore. Cody Rhodes and Darby Allin versus Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs. Not Will anymore. He's Powerhouse Hobbs. He's now hanging with Taz, and Taz needed to give him a better name, I guess. So we have that.
I like that idea.
Yeah, it's good names, good strong name for him. Britt Baker versus Layla Hirsch.
Oh.
Yes, very interesting. Chris Jericho versus Frankie Kazarian, which isn't what I would call a high drawing match, but it's going to be very well worked because Jericho is Jericho and Frankie is very underrated in my opinion, has been for a long time. And then the final thing is the Dynamite Diamond Ring Battle Royal. They are bringing that thing back from last year. You remember MJF won a Battle Royal last year and won the Diamond Ring. He now has to put the ring up on the line in this match. He'll be in it. Miro will be in it. Sammy Guevara, John Silver, Internet Hero, Alex Reynolds. I believe Kip Sabian is in it.
The Kipper.
The Kipper, yes. Somebody said the best idea for this match is for the Kipper to win, give the ring to Penelope, and then it's all hunky-dory, and then a year from now, he's like, oh, crap, I got to defend the ring in the Battle Royal, and they have to do a bunch of stuff with that. I think that's a great idea. That will not happen.
No.
But great idea. Several other people will also be in this match. So those are the other 4. God bless those matches. Nobody gives a crap about them, really, because this is all about Jon Moxley, Kenny Omega 2 for the AEW World Championship. Some are saying the biggest match in Dynamite history. I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that it is.
Yeah, for Dynamite, for sure.
Oh, yes. It may be the biggest match in the history of the company, quite frankly. I can't really think of anything else on that level. From what I understand, Tony Khan did a conference call today. TNT will be allowing them to go as long as they want with this match. So there may be an overrun. For all I know, there may be a big overrun, depending on when they start this match. And this is one of those situations where I think you'll agree, this is one of these matches where, as of right now, while some people have a general idea, no one can say 100% for sure how this is going to go.
Yeah.
There is no consensus, no doubt about it. Oh, he's winning this match.
Yeah, and that's tough to say, especially around this time of year. I'm going to compare to our WWE comparisons here. Right now, they're building up 2 title matches for this TLC show. No one's expecting the title to take place, because a title change to take place, because we know they're building up to WrestleMania. Drew and Roman are the way to go. Whereas you look at Dynamite, AEW in general, Moxley's been great as champion, PWI #1 wrestler for the last, starting in June, last 12 months before then. And then Kenny Omega is one of those people that's been at the top of the PWI, the biggest sensation outside of WWE when you consider an English-speaking wrestlers for about 5 to 10 years. One of the biggest names outside of the WWE in the mainstream. That was North America until AEW started. And then, the match quality is going to be very dependable. Anyone who's expecting this to be below 4 stars is not paying attention.
Right.
And then you involved everything else, especially with, we'll get into AAA, but Kenny Omega's tie-ins to AAA, how is that going to relate to it? Or as well, New Japan. There's a lot of rumors about how that might affect their booking when they get back to Japan because of their championship ties and possibilities there. So much is on the line, and it's very well done. I got to give AEW credit, because not only is it a good story, forgetting that all these other outside influences might be a factor, but you tie in some extra unpredictability because you don't know how it's going to affect in Mexico, how it's going to affect in Japan. And you also got to keep in mind, NXT, the competition, has thrown nothing onto Wednesday night to compete.
No.
So it's really going to be all eyes on AEW, except for idiots like me who still prefer NXT. But I doubt I'm going to be missing. I'm going to be catching anything that's going to be worth missing Moxley and Omega. And there's no way I cannot watch that replayed at 11 o'clock when I get a chance to see it again.
Right. Yeah. And as of right now, I believe the only thing NXT has even announced for the show is a ladder match, another ladder match.
That's right.
From WWE this year. I believe it's Shotzi Blackheart versus Raquel Gonzalez. All respect to them, but there's no way they can compete with this.
No. There's no competition with anything. Like, honestly, I might enjoy NXT overall, but for drawing power, they have nothing that'll compare to the biggest 2 names in AEW at this time, competing for their title on free TV and has been promoted for the last month. It's very smart. And while I've seen some people complain about giving it away on free TV, this is not Goldberg Hogan, where it was thrown on TV with 3 days notice. It's been booked and well in advance. It's been well hyped. They have the original match from over a year ago that was well received. Really, this is a great idea. AEW's really pulled off a 5-star show. And
we talked about the international intrigue with, AAA and New Japan. Lest we forget, there's also the thread of who attacked Jon Moxley just 2 weeks ago that has not been answered, that could come into play here. And who knows who that could entail. That's another factor here that adds to the intrigue, and it's something that could play out, because this is going to be, we can't say for sure because you never know, but with NXT not having a loaded card, there was some concern because in the US, the Steelers-Baltimore Ravens game in the NFL was moved to tomorrow, but it's in the afternoon, not in the evening, so it won't be going head-to-head. So with a weaker NXT lineup as of now, no NFL, and no political story, because we've seen that affect the ratings too, no holiday like last week, I think the chances are very high they're going to do over 1 million. Without question, that match itself, maybe the rest of the show isn't as strong, but Moxley Omega, I think that match is going to be well over 1 million overall.
For sure.
Those 2 by themselves, yeah.
Because even if they were to plan on NXT to have that ladder match take place at the same time the other match starts, and I don't think that'd be very wise, to be fair, but even if they were to do that, it's not going to keep over 1 million people from watching AEW.
No. Well, no, the problem is for NXT, it's the same thing you said you were going to watch AEW afterwards and such. People who are even interested in NXT, they can just watch that afterwards.
That's right. It'll be on the network. I think it's 24 hours later.
Yeah, this is a match that feels like you have to see it live. There was a discussion, this past week, somewhat controversial, but not really. People were arguing, are Omega and Moxley the two biggest names in the business right now, or is it Drew and Roman Reigns or whatever? And the reality is, it doesn't really matter which of the four. These are pretty much the four big guys in the U.S. right now. I would make that argument right now as far as full-time talent goes on the big shows. And we saw the buzz around Roman and Drew, and I think it's the same thing here. Maybe not on the same wide scale, because obviously main roster WWE is still a little ways ahead of AEW. But in terms of buzz and such, I think they're not all that far apart, those four. And I think that's why you see so many people excited for this. This is a special occasion. It's the two biggest guys that AEW has to offer outside of maybe Jericho and Cody. And they're going to have this long world title caliber match for the world title. There's ramifications beyond the world title. What does this mean for the mega title in AAA? What does this mean for New Japan? Although we'll get into some of that stuff in a minute. Who attacked Jon Moxley? Does that play out here?
Right.
Do they go to a draw to set up a third match? Do they finally put the title on Omega?
I cannot see a draw happening with all the buzz that they've got for this Winter is Coming promotion that they're doing for the show and having all eyes on Dynamite. I think it would be a really bad move, only because AEW really aims for the types of fans that would reject that sort of idea in general. Now, I understand, at least I find AEW fans are more forgiving of things that they wouldn't accept in WWE, but I do think they would be annoyed if they gave away such a huge match on TV and then ended in a draw to build up a pay-per-view 2 months down the line. I don't think that would be very well received. I would respect it as a fan of wrestling booking. That's good storytelling, but I think fans are going to be a little bit more particular about that sort of detail.
Well, draws are generally they always get a mixed reaction because there is an indecisiveness to it. I do think the majority of people would be fine with it, especially if it is a great match. It obviously wouldn't be the first time Omega has had a draw in a major match either. Him and Okada once went the full 60 at a Dominion show, I believe, in 2017.
Okay.
And that match was really well received. And ultimately, it didn't hurt their two subsequent rematches and such. I'm not going to dismiss the draw. I really wouldn't be surprised by anything here. But the thing with Moxley getting attacked a few weeks ago, now there's certainly ways where you can stretch that out for a few more weeks and such, or even have it come into play here and then do the draw, and then in the medium, Moxley feuds with this attacker before you go back to Omega. But it's just such an easy transition for Mox out of the title picture,
right,
to go after whoever it is that attacked him, that I don't see the draw for really that reason alone. I could be completely off base. They could be saving that thing for further down the road, but I think we're going to get the reveal of that after the match, and that leads to Moxley's next thing, and then Omega can go off and do whatever he's going to do. Really, the only argument for Omega not winning the title is, I've been thinking about it myself. I don't know who he goes against as champion at first. That's really, we can have a discussion on that here, because I really don't have a good answer for it. Most of the challengers have something on the horizon, it looks like.
Yeah, there could be some things on the horizon, but at the same time, AEW booking will always allow a little detour. No matter what, especially we've seen this with Moxley. He might have, or actually, let's do a better comparison. Cody Rhodes. He's had his eyes fixed on so many people, but he'll always sway. Like he had the feud with MJF, and you can feel like there's still meat to that bone. They could go back to that gimmick at not gimmick, but angle at any time, but they changed directions knowing that anytime that match could still happen. The feud can rebuild again, and it will be just as good. So I think they could do that with Moxley as well. Yeah, he can focus away from the title, and then when it comes to Omega, any of the people that have focus elsewhere could be directed back towards a world title match. As for an outside perspective, the idea of Archer getting a shot would be pretty interesting. Anyone from Team Taz, most likely would be Brian Cage, but still anyone from Team Taz can get a pay-per-view main event out of Omega. Most likely a loss, but still good exposure for anyone there.
Yeah.
Brody Lee taking the Dark Order towards the title again would always be pretty interesting. I know he's dealing with an injury right now, I think it is, but
yes,
he might be back in time for a pay-per-view title shot. All these things I could see happening, though I do know what you're saying. AEW's booked their division very well. There's a lot of people occupied, not a lot of available options.
Right. I was booking Revolution in my head the other day.
That's February, right?
Yeah, in February. Yeah. You know me, I like to get ahead on things. So
just a little bit.
Yeah, just a tiny bit. So I was thinking about it, and
I'm surprised that you're just booking 2021. I thought you would be thinking 2023.
Oh no, even I have my limits here. See, you bring up Brody Lee. One of the things on last week's show is they seem to set up that Hangman is being courted by the Dark Order. So my gut feeling there is that Brody Lee, when he returns, it's him and the Hangman.
Okay.
And ultimately, I think everybody can see the long-term goal here is that Omega is eventually going to put over Hangman, and Hangman's going to win the title.
I could see that.
So, Omega's going to win the belt. It's really just a question of, is it this week or is it a couple of weeks from now or a couple months from now, really? So, but in the immediate future, I don't think they're going to put him and Hangman together again so soon. And the Dark Order thing seems to suggest Hangman and Brody, because I can't really see them doing Hangman versus one of the underlings. Mm-hmm. They've already done him versus Evil Uno and John Silver, and those are really the biggest guys after Brody. I can't see him and Stu or him and Alex Reynolds or 10 or 5 being a really big match. Absolutely. Maybe Cabana, but they've done the Cabana match too already. So you have that. Jericho. Now, I could see Jericho and Kenny because there is a loose thread there.
Sure.
Kenny has not avenged the loss. He, remember, on the first main event at Double or Nothing, he lost to Jericho. So you could go back to that. But Jericho is currently in this thing with the MJF Inner Circle turmoil, which also would seem to take out MJF. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure. And this may be me overthinking it, but it feels like something big is going to happen coming out of this to set up something for both Moxley and Omega. And I will tell you now, and I don't know anything, mm-hmm. but beyond what I've found out, Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega's longtime tag partner,
right,
is a free agent in February.
Okay.
Revolution is
the end of
February, and that has obviously been a match people have wanted to see for a long time there.
Yeah, and
they wanted Ibushi to come in when this company first formed, and he ultimately chose New Japan, although only for 2 years. I don't know if he's going to be interested. Obviously, there's been some smoke to this whole AEW New Japan partnership that isn't what everyone hopes is.
Right.
I don't know. I could see something like that. I think I have to imagine that whoever attacked Moxley isn't going to be just it's not going to be Matt Cardona.
No.
Or somebody of that level. It has to be somebody of some decent name recognition. I don't know if it's not. Now, I'm Kenta, who has been the popular name there. Kenta, from as best I know, is in Japan.
Right.
And Tony Khan said today on this conference call that Moxley is not booked for Wrestle Kingdom.
Okay.
So if you take that at face value, that would seem to indicate that it's not going to be Kenta who's the one behind attacking Moxley. But it still leaves a bunch of people. Nick Gage has been rumored. I brought up Sami Callihan before. Now, I don't know if he's done with Impact yet, but the contract is up this month too. It is now December.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but that's what makes this so exciting, because there's so many unknowns at play here about the direction going forward. All we really know is that Omega's likely going to be the champion, and Moxley is likely going to feud with this person who attacked him, and we don't know who the attacker is, and we don't have a clear picture on who Omega's first opponent is going to be. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, a lot of up in the air in possibilities. And AEW has been very good at that. So while my complaints are almost always strictly to the in-ring portion, when it comes to the storytelling, AEW, it's kind of hard to beat. I might prefer the structure of NXT in general, but I can't say that the angles are as exciting. AEW's really got a good thing going when it comes to that. And yeah, I do see that beating a million. So what comes to the rest of the card, that Dynamite ring, what was the prize? What, do you get a title shot when you win that?
No, I think it just fit MJF because, you know, it's a fancy piece of bling, and MJF is a high society kind of snobbish persona.
Okay.
So I think it fit him really well. I wouldn't be surprised if he won this again. My gut feeling is, honestly, I would go with Sammy Guevara, because they've kind of been feuding within the inner circle.
Right.
Guevara hates him, hates the fact that he's there. And I think giving the ring to Guevara creates some nice tension there, or even giving it to Wardlow would create nice tension between MJF and Wardlow. This could go really anyway. I could see Hangman winning it with the Dark Order's help, even though it doesn't really fit him. You know, there's a few, I mean, I don't remember everybody in this match. I guess maybe you could give it to Miro just to give him something.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I just mean, what is the purpose of these people competing for this ring? Is it just a battle royal in general for the ring, and there's no prize or consequence or stake at in mind?
I don't think it's leading to like a title shot or anything like that.
Interesting.
It's just something for the ring, and they'll probably create a few things out of that. But overall, compared to like the casino battle royale and such, it's a low stakes sort of thing. And I mean, battle royals, as you and I both know, can be very hit or miss. So who knows how this one is going to.
Well, the smart thing is, you mentioned how many little stories are going on in this show. And if they're using that big title match to draw as many people to AEW, perhaps for the first time, then you're going to be showcasing a lot of other things that are going on. So if people come in for Omega and Moxley, but they see, oh, I like that, whatever, not that I can see what's interesting about Miro and Kip right now, but if someone is interested in what's going on with Miro and Kip, they might tune in a bit more on Wednesday instead of tuning in to NXT the next time that they're both, all right, hanging out again. So whatever might happen, these little stories in battle royals, they tend to be the best part to keep you interested for however long it is. When you talk about the Royal Rumble, for example, yeah, it's great to talk about who might be number one, who's going to win, who's going to get the Iron Man and all that other stuff. But I love moments like, if I go back to 1990, I'm really backing myself up here, but Roddy Piper and Bad News Brown eliminated each other in the middle of the match, and they were brawling all the way back to the entrance. And that's not something that happened very often back in 1990. Right. That was a very rare occurrence, and it built up to the WrestleMania match between the two, which the less said about the paint job we saw on that, the better. But in general, I love those little stories that build up to something else, and that sounds like exactly what this Battle Royal can do.
Oh, yeah, that's when the Royal Rumble has always been at its best, when it's setting up other feuds within it that then leads somewhere. Yeah, I think it'll be good for that. I mean, I can't say that's the most interesting match on the show, but that's mostly because it's like a battle royal. Honestly, you know, I thought they were going to put another big match on the show. I think a lot of people did. And I kind of think it's actually impressive that they showed as much restraint as they did, because they are putting the biggest show on. And normally you would think, well, you need another one to just solidify things, but they're so confident in Moxley Omega that even though you do have Cody and Jericho on the show, which doesn't hurt, those guys are proven draws to this audience. Right. They're not in huge matches. Jericho and Kazarian is not something people would be banging the doors down to see necessarily. It's a nice match, but it's not something. Yeah, it's not something, oh, I need to see it. You know, the tag match isn't something you absolutely need to see, even though it'll probably be really good. And, you know, Britt is a pretty decent draw for the women's division, too. And Layla Hirsch is really good, but that's not something people need to.
They're all mid-card matches, basically, and we're so used to so many cards with a main event and a co-main event, and there is no co-main event on this card, is what you're basically trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been easy for them to say, dude, because, you know, Cody is feuding with Team Taz. It would have been easy for them to do Cody versus Cage on the show.
With the title on the line. Oh, no, he's not champion, sorry.
FTW championship on the line.
That makes sense.
Or Darby versus Cage for the TNT title. Mm-hmm. They could have easily done the Bucks and Helico and Jack Evans on this show.
Well, that's where I was going to ask. Nothing you've mentioned so far involves the very deep tag team division that AEW has. None of these matches, other than maybe in the Battle Royal, there doesn't sound to be any tag teams on the card.
Yeah, the tag teams, a bunch of them are in the Battle Royal, as
there you go.
Turns out. Yeah. I think that just goes to show you that they're so confident in this match that they want to save, you know, because they've obviously got tag team feuds, you know, the Hybrid 2 and the Young Bucks are feuding, as we just talked about. Miro and the Kipper are feuding with Chuck and Trent. Mm-hmm. They haven't done that match yet, so they're clearly saving those for either next week or I know Tony Khan has talked about more big shows coming up, because obviously they got a lot of time till Revolution, so they're going to do a few bigger Dynamites in between. Smart. So I think what this shows you is they're comfortable saving those and comfortable going with just this big match, because it is just so big that you really can just go with a decent but not massive undercard.
Absolutely. I think we saw that a lot back in the previous eras, you know, like a Clash of Champions, for example, where they would have a really good show, but the rest of the show, it was all good and it was all interesting. Or if I stick to my WWE references, Saturday night's main event would have that one big title match, but it would usually happen in the middle of the show, and then the headliner would be Strikeforce against the Hart Foundation, which great match and an interesting feud, but wouldn't headline a card, but fits on this show because you got Jerome, whatever. You were drone in, I'm making up words as we go now, by Hulk Hogan or Savage or Andre or DiBiase, but you stuck around to see what's going on elsewhere. I don't think that's what's going to happen here, where suddenly Moxley and Omega is going to open up the show or be at the 9 o'clock hour. Let's start at 9:30, and that's going to build up into the overrun for sure.
It's a good thing Tony Khan did this conference call earlier so we can make clear everything. He said it's going to close the show, so we don't have to worry about it opening or anything like that. But you make a great point, because like you think about those early Clash of the Champions shows, nobody remembers the bulk of those shows, but they remember Ric Flair versus Sting.
There you go.
They remember Steamboat versus Flair. I believe it was the second encounter between the two of them the next year that both went against WrestleMania and both put a dent in WrestleMania.
Yeah. So, and not only that, but they put in a dent, but I'm sure, I'm not going to go back and do my homework on this one, but I'm sure the ratings for NWA or WCW programming were pretty high compared to normal after those shows, because they drew people in, and then someone would say, you know what, I'm going to tune back in next week. I want to see what else they might do.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to be wise here.
And obviously, you know, that match Sting and Flair had, that's the match that made Sting.
Right.
Like the rest of the stuff that happens with Sting, for better and in the case of RoboCop for worse, are all because of what happened at that Clash of the Champions.
Oh, RoboCop.
So, yeah, the RoboCop. And we'll have to do a show on all the terrible Sting gimmicks one day. Him and Luger. We'll have to cover them both.
We don't have that much time on the planet.
We don't have that much time.
Well, let's stick with one last thing when it comes to AEW. What was tying into the international connections? Because you were mentioning about AAA, for example. What's going on with Kenny Omega for that show? And then is there anything else going on with New Japan?
Well, obviously, as we've talked about before, Kenny Omega is defending the AAA Mega Championship against Laredo Kid, one-time AEW guy Laredo Kid. He worked one show for them. That match will be on December 12th, not the 26th, as some fool in a hat reported last week. We won't bring
Canadian
him up.
Hat.
Yep, Canadian hat.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk more about that later. But so, yeah, that match is on the 12th. So that's a week from Saturday. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, I mean, the general consensus is Kenny wins the title tomorrow night. AEW is not going to want him to lose anywhere. Mm-hmm. So they would not want him to lose at this AAA show, which would mean he would retain there. Of course, I don't know what the deal is with the AAA AEW alliance these days. You know, I'm not sure it's exactly as strong as it was when they first started out and all that. I don't know if Omega wants to keep traveling back and forth to Mexico every couple of months to do these shows, given
especially
he also,
right now.
You know, especially right now in the pandemic and his workload between being a talent, EVP, he obviously has a hand in the women's division. He's involved in this newly announced video game. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how up he's going to be for that, but it is hard for me to believe if he wins the title tomorrow, and we can do our predictions in a minute, that Tony, and for all I know, maybe Tony Khan would be fine with it, but I can't see him sitting there and going, yeah, I want him to lose to Laredo Kid and Triple Mania. And, I'm not sure, and to be fair, I'm not sure AAA wants him to lose either. I think if push came to shove, AAA would love to have Kenny Omega as their champion for as long as humanly possible.
Entirely possible. The only thing that I was thinking when you were saying that is if Moxley somehow has an agreement where he can show up and attack Omega, just as a name, for example. Moxley attacks Omega to cause him the title, and that could create some good buzz for AEW while also transitioning the championship in AAA. I don't know if that's the type of move that might be pulled off in AAA or not, but it gives them an option.
AAA does love their interference. So they would be, and they would be very open to Moxley coming in. They wanted him
at one point.
They've wanted him to come in for a while now, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know how feasible that is given the pandemic. I mean, with Omega, at least, you know, he's the champion and he's clearly a big name and such. So I think, I don't know if they would be open to that. But I mean, we're going to talk more about Triple Mania later because they have the whole rundown of the card and such. Absolutely. As far as New Japan goes, as I said earlier, you know, Tony Khan said that Mox isn't booked for the show. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if he's not booked for the show, I think that kind of has to squash the idea that Kenta, unless New Japan's going to be like, yeah, you could do the match on Dynamite, which doesn't make any sense to me, but right. I don't know. That would seem to eliminate him from the board. And as far as I know, he's in Japan now anyway.
Right. So what other ties could there be to New Japan?
I mean, the only thing I know for sure now, because they're doing the best of the Super Juniors thing right now and the World Tag League. So some of the big names are not booked on that show. That includes Will Ospreay, Okada, Tetsuya Naito, and Kota Ibushi. So theoretically, it's not impossible that one of them could be on this show tomorrow and something could be set up there. Would I bet money on that?
No.
No. But I can't. It's the same reason why I can't entirely dismiss Brock Lesnar or CM Punk tomorrow. Anything is possible, but I would not bank on that happening there. You know?
All right.
Yeah, I know. I see you making the face there. Anything can happen in pro wrestling. That's all I'm saying there. Would I say that any of those things are going to happen? No. I would love it if one of them did.
Well, keep that in mind next time I say I have faith in WWE booking, because anything can happen. They can pull off a good angle. You just happen to have a different outlook on it.
Yes. Well, I mean, look, I'm a realist here. I don't believe any of those guys are going to show up. No. I'm just saying, the situation is so unique that it's not out of the realm of, like, if this was like a normal thing, like if this was Moxley and Eddie Kingston, for example, I wouldn't even be bringing this up. And if there wasn't an angle that involved a mystery attacker and the unknown of who Omega potentially defends against, I wouldn't be bringing this up. But because there is so much intrigue, and because it's going to be the highest viewed Dynamite of the year, probably, you know, they're going to want to keep people around. So Absolutely. You can't dismiss the possibility that there's going to be a big swing. It's just not realistic to say that, oh, they're bringing in Brock Lesnar so Moxley can finally get his revenge for WrestleMania 32 or something like that.
I think the much more likely scenario, unfortunately, is we see the return of either Henry Cejudo or Mike Tyson, which I think would be a disaster.
Oh, the Tyson. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, Tyson just had that
exhibition match, yeah.
Yes, that a lot of buzz around it, which I was not, I didn't watch it. I was not particularly excited for it. But I will say, I don't think that's going to happen because I think Tyson's price just grew exponentially from that.
Well, if they already had an agreement before this, you know, let's have that exhibition, but then show up 2 weeks later on Dynamite. Anyways, who knows?
I think they only had the agreement for that show and the show after, as far as I know of. And they were going to talk again, but they also have this thing with Shaq now that may come to fruition. And honestly, if I was going to do either or, and I know I see you making that face, I'm not particularly excited about either.
I'm honestly just eyes glazing over. Just Dynamite in general just doesn't do it for me. But I apologize. Keep going.
But yeah, if you're going to do either or, Shaq is going to come cheaper and you're going to be able to cross promote with inside the NBA when the NBA season comes back and such. It just makes way more sense to do that. So, all right, now let's close this this discussion on this subject here, and I'm going to ask you, who's going to win tomorrow?
Oh, who cares?
Who cares?
I don't give a crap.
All right,
it's AEW. I will praise their storytelling, and I will be interested to find out who wins. I will not suffer through a match to find out, though, because unfortunately, when it comes to AEW match quality, I just fall asleep in how repetitive the finisher kickout stuff is. It's the exact same complaint I had about NXT Takeover main events with Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano. That said, Moxley and Omega is definitely going to be better than the standard match. I still expect it to be way too much for me to handle. When I say 4-star match minimum, I mean for an internet fan base. For the Joe Martel fan base, I expect 2 stars.
2 stars?
It's not to my taste. It's not, I'm not saying it's bad. I just know it's not going to be what I care for.
Right.
The same reason why I don't watch, you know, romantic comedies. There might be, The Notebook is a classic movie, Titanic. I don't watch those because I know I won't care for them.
It's no Happiest Season, I can tell you that much, The Notebook.
My sister was talking about that one. What the heck's that one?
Happiest Season? It's a new movie released on Hulu. I watched it last night. It's great. Aubrey Plaza plays a normal person in it, and it really threw me how great she was at playing a normal person. That's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get where you're coming from. But I just like if you were booking this here, if you're in this position and you have to pick one of these two guys to go forward as
Omega,
the champion, what are you doing? You're going Omega.
I would go Omega, not because I think he'd be the better champion overall. I think Moxley is the best person for AEW to have at the forefront of their branding. But at the same time, he's been at the forefront for not a full year, but for quite a long time. And a switch up could be nice, could rejuvenate Moxley, who could win it 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line, who knows? And he won't be any hurt by it. He can lose a title and still be the biggest name on the card in most cases. And I think the timing for Omega is right now. Where it comes from an outside perspective, there hasn't been as much buzz for Omega since he entered the company and everyone assumed he was going to be the first champion. Well, he's rebuilt himself really well with this tag team with Hangman. I think he's done really well with this push towards the title shot, and I think it does create a little bit more interest. I know we don't have an idea who will be his first challenger, but I think a lot of the, I don't want to say failed challengers, but the people that Moxley worked with will be fresh again when it comes to Omega as champion.
Yeah, I think it has to be Omega. I mean, in some regards, I think it may be too soon to take it off Moxley, but only because he's been so great as the champion. He's been such a great representative for the company. His matches have all delivered. His feuds have all delivered, especially the last one with Eddie Kingston, which was just top quality stuff. So on that standpoint, you hate to see it come to an end, but it has to come to an end at some point. Omega is now the hottest he's been in AEW since they started. He's gotten that momentum back. And again, as I've told you many times, I think the long-term plan is him and Hangman, with Hangman eventually winning the title and becoming the guy. And you can do all of that. And Moxley isn't going to suddenly go to the mid-card. He's still going to be right up there at the top. Whoever he's feuding with next, that'll be a big thing. You can always go back to Omega Moxley later in the year where Moxley attempts to get his revenge, and we see what happens there. Moxley will have big matches with Hangman down the road. Hell, Moxley will probably have, him and Cody is something I would be very interested at some point down the road too. So he'll be perfectly fine losing this. So while in some regards it'll be sad to see him lose, I do think it's time. I think it's time for Kenny Omega to win this, and I think it's time we enter the next phase, whatever it is for AEW.
I think you put up a good point about the next phase, because while I enjoy Moxley, I know there's a kind of a prototype for his types of matches, and there are some swells amongst the internet fans where they're a little tired of that. I know we have a mutual friend out in Alberta who feels that way about the Moxley stereotypical match, for example. But switching gears, it would be completely different. Not that Moxley is just a deathmatch guy, but that is one of his specialties. And then Omega would be a complete opposite type of main event match. He can deliver a death match, as we've seen against Moxley, of all people. They had a really great brutal match over a year ago. But in general, he can deliver a more technical 5-star main event, which is
he's gonna do the New Japan style.
Yeah, and that could be something. I don't know if it's going to succeed or not. I won't predict on that, but I do think having a breath of fresh air in the main event will do AEW some good. And the worst comes to worst, if ratings go down because that match or his reign doesn't work well, you're absolutely right. Moxley will not be hurt, and he can regain it. And with the proper storytelling, which I would depend on AEW to do, they can get it back to where they were.
Right. Yeah. I don't see any negatives here of putting it on Omega. I think it's just the right time to do it. And it was always going to be this way. The moment Moxley beat Omega last year, you knew that they were going to do this meeting again, and it was probably going to be in this type of situation where Moxley was the champion and Omega had taken the long road of recovery to get back to this point to get his revenge. And now Omega will win, and they'll be 1-1, and now you reverse the roles, and Moxley will be the one who has to build himself back up to go and get his revenge, the same way Hangman is going to have to do it. This is where AEW is really great at these storylines and such, because they do this sort of thing. It's so simple, but it pays off so well at the end.
It's not a storyline or related comment that I want to make about AEW, but one thing they've done really well that's very important, and we've discussed this years before AEW was even a thing. Wrestling let's be honest. WWE has to cut back on the amount of matches and appearances of their stars. AEW has done a great job where Moxley doesn't appear every week. They make a big deal when he returns, and it's legit. He doesn't have matches in tag matches every 2 weeks the way we see with McIntyre or Roman. They really save it for big moments so that matches like what we saw a year ago with Omega, the rematch will be important because we haven't seen them feuding for 17 months like Mysterio and Rollins or whatever the case may be. Wrestling needs to come back, and that's one thing AEW has done really well, and I think I told you this over a year ago that I hope it pushes WWE's buttons to return to that sort of format. I think we're kind of seeing it with Roman. Roman is on SmackDown every week, but he hasn't wrestled on SmackDown every week. He hasn't been in tag matches with Jay very often, if at all. I can't even recall. He's still the special attraction. The matches against him are still a big deal, all without having him in the ring constantly like we're seeing on Raw with McIntyre. So AEW kudos to you on doing that. And it's not just the champion doing this, it's pretty much the entire card. We just mentioned how entire roster, I should say, because we just mentioned the entire card, and there is no tag team match. There's nothing filling up just to have a tag team match for the sake of having a tag team match. They're depending on the rest of the roster to deliver, and I think it's healthier overall for story building.
Yeah, it's the same thing that Lucha Underground and NXT from a few years ago were so great at doing. Not everything needed to be every week on the show. They gave things room to breathe. Not too much room to breathe, though. They would be back soon, but they didn't have to be on every show. And ultimately, I think, that's why in 2015 especially, those were the two hot promotions for the hardcore fans there, whereas main roster WWE and just didn't have that same thing. It is interesting though, because you do bring up a great point about Roman as we now segue into the WWE stuff.
Sure.
It is very strange how they have gotten that right with him, as you pointed out, and then the rest of it, they seem to not have the same handle on it.
It's going to be a slow burn because no matter what, while I do prefer that style of booking, it's not something you can just flip a switch and make work overnight. Right. You're going to have to ease the fans into expecting. They sort of did something like that. It came out flat, in my opinion, on Raw, where Raw didn't have Drew last week. He lost to Roman at the pay-per-view, didn't show up on Saturday's show, and then they promoted his appearance. Oh, he was returning to Raw this Monday. And I'm sorry, you were gone a week. I don't need a 17 amount of commercials telling me we get the return of Drew McIntyre tonight and a big promo from him, and then a tag match with him and Sheamus against Miz and Morrison. You've got
that's like when CM Punk left as WWE champion and then came back 2 weeks later.
Yeah. It just kills the buzz. You want us to miss him and make a big deal that he returns. Make us miss him so that we care when he returns. Don't just tell us, oh, it's been a week, it's special. No, it's not special. No. What is special is, while it's not main roster WWE, NXT has no show really against AEW this week. They did announce that ladder match, as we mentioned, and they're building up to their own pay-per-view special this weekend with WarGames.
Right.
That card... I'm excited because it's NXT and I like the show.
Yeah.
I like this show overall, but that card is pretty disappointing. I want to run that down quickly.
I had the same reaction as you did.
Yeah. First off, I enjoy wrestling history, as you and I have discussed several times, and I do appreciate NWA despite growing up a WWE fan, but I don't have a lot of attachment to WarGames because in general, when you're watching them on replay, you don't get the full impact of what mattered about the Horsemen against whoever they were against, or even the NWO against the Warrior and all the other stupid things that they pulled in that era of it. You don't grasp that when you watch on replay. Whether you're on the network, you should really be, in my opinion, you really should be watching every Saturday night WCW show until the pay-per-view so you understand why it was so important to have this 4-on-4 cage match. Yeah. So reverting back to what we see in WWE and NXT now, I don't find the angles intriguing enough to deserve the 4-on-4 cage match. I'm sure the fans love Undisputed Era, as you and I will always roll our eyes at the love that Adam Cole gets, despite being
not Roderick Strong, though. We like him.
I like everyone outside of Adam Cole on some level. Bobby Fish is very good, though. If he was in the Adam Cole position, I probably wouldn't like him. But as the fourth guy of the the stable, yeah, he's great. Kyle O'Reilly, I really like as a technician. Roderick Strong is one of the most dependable wrestlers on the planet at any time in any kind of match. Adam Cole, for the exception, has one type of match, overdoes it every single time, and it's become boring. And he's only been in NXT for 3 years?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so I don't care about that so much, other than it's NXT, so I'll enjoy it. I like the Pat McAfee angle, and I hope they win only because that is fresh and interesting. I just don't see the booking leading to that.
I hope they win because they're very clearly the better team of the two.
It's Pete Dunne can do no wrong with me. That guy is amazing. He's going to be a star at some point.
Yeah, I know you brought, and Pete Dunne is really great. To me, the star of that team is Biff or Oney Lorcan.
Oney Lorcan.
But I knew him as Biff Busick in another life. I love that guy. I'm happy that he's in this match. I would bet a lot of money he'll be the best guy in this match too.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'd betting on Pete Dunne or Roderick Strong, but Oney Lorcan brings such a unique drama because he's not a big guy, but he brings this brute toughness from a small guy who just can't be beat up very easily. I love that tag team. I enjoy the heel turn. I like Pat McAfee as the mouthpiece. I think it's a great setup. I just don't care because it's against Undisputed Era, who gets deflated the minute you would mention Adam.
It's very weird too because they've clearly brought McAfee in because he's a quasi celebrity and such, and he does seem to really care about wrestling and is pretty damn good for his experience and such. But he really hasn't helped them a whole lot in terms of growing the audience, it feels like.
Well, he's only been on the show for a couple of weeks, and then we did see that he was in the ring in this new gimmick for a couple of weeks. It's only about a month old. And then they did win in viewership last week, which I really didn't expect. I know it might be a fluke and all those sorts of things, but that could be part of it.
In fact, they won in they lost head to head, but they had more viewers overall because they did the overrun and AEW did not. So
whatever the reason might have been, that was one category that NXT was improving, and that would be possibly for Pat McAfee. As you and I have discussed.
Show last week?
I don't even know. I can't recall.
I don't think so, actually. Now that was
I think it was a masked person who attacked, and we never found out who it was. And Pat McAfee said he wasn't going to be at the show, and then someone just attacked them with the same mask Pat used.
That's right. So it's implied to be McAfee, but he was probably like, guys, I'm having Thanksgiving dinner. I can't make it. Yeah. So they put some random bloke under the mask.
Yeah, entirely possible. Either way, there is some interest with Pat McAfee. I don't know if he's hurting or not improving, as you and I will discuss all the time.
I don't think it's his fault necessarily. I just, that's clearly what they brought him in for. And I think they overestimated how big of a name he is, but that's not his fault. He's doing his job.
I don't think that's the sole purpose of bringing in Pat McAfee. I think it's more along the lines that NXT doesn't have a lot of great talkers. Pat McAfee is a great talker, and he's amazing in that role. And he's so good at being a heel that you want to cheer him, but then you start hating him again, all in the same promo. So it's very fascinating to watch. Other matches on that show, we have the women's War Game match, which, again, I'm glad that all these women are getting involved, and I like most of them, if not all of them. But I don't really think there's a reason to put them in a cage. It feels like kind of a forced gimmick match, the way WWE does with Hell in a Cell or whatever the case is. There's no real point in having that.
Yeah, that's a big problem with this. That now War Games for them is kind of becoming like Hell in a Cell or all these endless ladder matches they keep doing, where they're doing them just to do them instead of it being naturally.
Yeah.
And such. Which was going to be the case for the Elite versus the Inner Circle when they were going to do that War Games match, which they never did because of the pandemic.
Blood and Guts, right?
What? Yeah, Blood and Guts. That's what it was called. And they are going to do that
eventually,
like that eventually. But yeah, I mean, that at least, and even then, I'll even say then, that wasn't as hot as it had been earlier when they started building to that match again, but it was at least a feud and it was organic.
Right.
Here, it feels like, oh, well, this is when we usually do War Games, so we're going to put these.
Yeah, it's falling flat with me.
Yeah, and then the rest of the show is...
there's the Caribbean strap match. You can tell, again, I'm a WWF fan when I reference Savio Vega, but no, it's just a regular strap match.
Not that Survivor Series payday. Good for you, Savio.
Dexter Lumis will be taking on Cameron Grimes. I know a lot of mixed opinions on Dexter Lumis. In the ring, has not delivered, but the gimmick, I just find it enthralling. I can't wait to find out what happens with him. And Cameron Grimes is one of the better opponents to probably. He's very good. He's got a great gimmick. And I think if anyone's going to get a great match out of Lumis in a strap match, Grimes is one of the ways to go, but it's probably going to be 2 or 3 stars, average stuff. It's takeover. Yeah.
Strap matches are very hard to do well.
Yeah. I struggle to find the best. I think the first time they had the gimmick where the person was following behind, hitting the turnbuckles at the same time, very WWE trope. The first time was very effective when they finally launched and they had that last person hit it. And then they replayed it. Go ahead.
That's a lot of people thought that the dog collar match between Cody and Brody Lee was going to be one of those things where they were tied together and they had to bang the corners. And instead they had this brutal brawl that ended up being super great, as I recall.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't even that long ago, that match. Feels like it was
so yeah, you know, a couple of times you've asked me what happened in WWE and you say I don't remember. It's not because I didn't watch. It's because it's between you and I. Think about the amount of wrestling we watch.
Oh, a lot.
You know, it's so easy and I watch a lot of classic wrestling while still watching today's stuff. So it's very easy for things to go in one ear and out the other, especially with WWE, because so much of it feels formulaic and doesn't stand out that much. Continuing on with NXT, we also have the triple threat North American title, where we have Leon Ruff taking on Johnny Gargano and Damian Priest. I like the potential and pieces of this Leon Ruff title win. There is some interest there, but you know it's just not going to end up well for Ruff. He might move up the card a little bit, but he's not going to be on the mid card like the way these guys are. So it's hard to feel excited for this match, and I'm kind of sick of Priest against Gargano. I want Priest to win the title and move on to someone else.
It feels like the reaction to this, a lot of people, I mean, Leon Ruff is popular with people. He was a successful guy on the indies and such, but a lot of people feel like they've treated this reign as like a flukish joke in a lot of regards. You know, so it's hard to take him seriously. Damian Priest is a really good performer, but he's not the most interesting guy. And at least from my perspective, I got to be honest with you, I don't really need to see Johnny Gargano ever again at this point.
No, you've never been a big fan of his, though.
He's become, well, he won me over briefly with the match he had with Andrade several years ago, which I still think was probably one of the 2 best NXT matches of all time. Just a great match. But he's since moved into parody Shawn Michaels territory, which makes sense because we all know who likes to age in Johnny's matches.
Right.
And I don't think he's just become this overwrought, overdramatic, hopelessly over the top kind of performer. And I mean, he's a very good wrestler still, don't get me wrong, but it feels like he peaked a while ago.
Agreed.
And
I remember there was a time I was trying to convince you he's better than you thought. He's really good. His babyface stuff is really great. And then it's not that I was wrong, but it did plateau. It did peak.
Yeah.
And this gimmick as a heel, it's good, but it's still Johnny Gargano. And I still feel like the more interesting of the power couple is your favorite, Candice LeRae.
Unfortunately, yeah, well, she is the best of the 2. There's no doubt about that in my mind, at least. They just, they had something special with that Ciampa Gargano feud. And unfortunately, like a lot of other things WWE does, it went way past the sell-by date, and it culminated in one of the funniest matches of all time. Go for it. In one final beat. And it just went way, way too long. And they're not the only people who have been guilty of this. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega have been known to be a little over dramatic too in their in their matches and such. Although not to this extent. Thank God Shawn Michaels isn't agenting their matches. Is all I'll say there.
Yeah,
but
there's no way I'd appreciate.
Yeah, that's just. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the wrestling on this show will be fine, but there's nothing I look at it and I go, wow, this is not very interesting. And where is Finn Balor on this card? Which, by the way, is something I never thought I would ever say.
Yeah, you're no Finn Balor fan.
No, I'm not. But, he's the champion. He's not even on this show. They don't have a title match?
Well, I think that's similar to what you were just saying about the Dynamite, that they do have the title match and they don't have to build up the card too much. That could be the takeover thing where they're saying, all right, let's focus on everyone else and then build up a new challenger for the next takeover.
Yeah, I guess it just feels weird that, he's available and they don't have.
I don't know how available he is. He was injured after the Kyle O'Reilly match. I know he showed up again to say he's back, but he hasn't been physical as far as I remember. I might be wrong, but he might be holding off. Maybe he's only got a couple more weeks till he's cleared.
Maybe he's like, he's 4 weeks from being cleared, but they're like, that's enough time. We can bring him back and we'll build to somebody in the interim. I have to imagine Cross is going to be healthy sooner than later. So maybe they'll go in that direction.
Entirely possible. So elsewhere in WWE, honestly, Raw was fine. Nothing too special. Not really much to talk about there. SmackDown, it's the Roman show. The only other good thing I really wanted to highlight is I'm all in for Bianca taking on Bayley. I'm excited for that angle. And hopefully something happens with everyone involved with Big E, Jey Uso, Sami, not Guevara, but Sami Zayn and Daniel Bryan. They all seem to be in, I don't know who's going to be feuding with who, but they all seem to be tied in together in some way, which could probably build into some sort of I think it's Universal title on that brand right now. I get the two confused. But Roman will probably end up having a challenge from one of those 4 people getting into TLC or Royal Rumble. Those are interesting factors, but WWE just is not what's important right now. AEW is front and center. And then another thing that I wanted to cover real quick, we have the debut in just about minutes from now. NWA is bringing back Shockwave, and they announced the card today, or it might have been yesterday, but I read about it today, and I thought we'd discuss that quickly. They have Nick Aldis. I don't think it's a title match, but they have Nick Aldis taking on Mike Bennett, who is getting some buzz right now from ROH. You said you watched that return?
I watched the return angle they did for him, and much to my surprise, I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, if you want to, the way we were commenting about Gargano, Finn Balor, and Adam Cole, we probably can add in Mike Bennett to the same category of internet darlings, not so much him anymore, but at one point an internet darling who just doesn't measure up to, I don't know, more critical fans' expectations. Is that the fair way to say it?
Yeah, Bennett is a guy who, we were describing Nick Aldis before the show as a guy who's like a good worker, but is great at like everything else. So it makes him a great champion, a great all-around performer.
Right.
Bennett is an average worker and a really good talker and personality. So it makes him a slightly above average talent, at least in my opinion, but he's not like a can't miss guy, but he has his purpose there. And him and Taven were always solid together. And I know Matt Taven gets a bad rap. I think we talked about this last week, but I've always liked him. I think he's very underrated and such. He's just always been kind of the least interesting guy with more interesting people around. And Bennett has suffered from that too.
That's right.
And at least now them together, and Taven's had a decent feud with the Rob Zombie looking guy and Tyler Bateman. It worked pretty well for me overall. So I'm happy for him in that regard, and maybe he'll be rejuvenated. And it's also possible that, the WWE stint was just so bad. Maybe it's just made us think, wow, this guy is worse than he actually is. So
yeah, you never know. Elsewhere on the card, someone we were trying to Google before we started, we couldn't really find a lot, but Jordan Cruz, if anyone knows who he is, all the power to you, but he's taking on Eli Drake. And I've been liking Eli, but that's another guy where not the best worker, but personality.
Oh, great personality.
Yeah, charisma out off the charts. So I like Eli Drake. And I'm sure NWA wasn't, when we were watching Power, there weren't a lot of amazing matches, but it was just a great concept, a good amount of charisma, promos, and match. Just a weird form, not weird, but a different, unique format.
The best workers are in the women's division.
Definitely. Well, speaking of, that's not that she's the best worker, but Camille, she's got a match as well, taking on someone you were telling me about, Heather Monroe, who was on AEW recently, correct?
I really like Heather Monroe. SoCal talent, good friends with Taya, as anybody who follows Taya will know. She worked 2 matches for AEW. The most notable was one against Hikaru Shida. I believe we figured out was the August 12th Dynamite.
I think about then, yeah.
Around that time. It was only about 3 minutes, but it was a very good 3 minutes, I thought. She's got good athleticism, very, very capable worker. I don't know how great. I mean, Camille, I haven't seen a ton of. She's a great presence. I don't know if she's a great worker necessarily, but I don't know enough either way. So I'm sure it'll be fine.
I think it's very similar to. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's an intriguing match.
It's intriguing because Camille's been such an essential part to NWA Power on the sidelines, but not in the ring. So I don't know if it's really her NWA. I don't want to say her debut, but it might be her YouTube show debut. I don't even know. But I don't think she was ever on Power. I don't think she's been on any of the pay-per-views since Power. I think there was only one before the pandemic canceled the second one. But it's still going to be a big exposure for her. And when you say presence, that's the best way to put it. She is such a huge presence. And for someone who's never
really
seen
helped all this out.
Definitely. That duo is very interesting and very unique. I'm excited to see what happens there. So I was a big Power fan. I'm looking forward to Shockwave. I'm looking forward to Impact because Impact, along with NXT, is one of those promotions where, in my opinion, it's always dependable. Whether it's your thing or not, obviously, opinions vary.
Have we figured out who shot Bravo yet?
They announced it last week. Not the most interesting.
Who was it?
It wasn't Larry D. It was his side personality, Lawrence D. During the Russell House segments,
Mojo I guess he didn't answer the call when they tried to reach him there.
Something like that. Larry D during the Russell House segments discovered that he had a almost. Do you remember Family Matters? Urkel's Stefan character?
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah. So Larry became his version of Stefan, which was Lawrence, and he wanted to get his love back from Rosemary, so shot Johnny Bravo.
And Johnny's still alive, isn't he?
Yeah, he actually came back and told everyone because they were about to not frame but convict Johnny Swinger, who is always the star of these segments. That guy is comedy genius.
They should have made Swinger the killer and put him in jail. We could have done skits in jail. They would have been so great.
Have you seen any of the segments for the Johnny Bravo stuff?
Unfortunately, no, I have not.
They had an amazing segment. To anyone who has been watching Impact, people who don't like the comedy and silliness probably wouldn't like this, but they had Tommy Dreamer wearing like a Sherlock Holmes hat, really speed detective stuff. And Swinger came in and he told Swinger, "Could you empty your fanny pack?" And you can see the gun is hanging out of it. And Swinger's like, "Is that a Magnum?" And Swinger pulls out a gold condom and says, "Yeah, baby." He gives us Swinger comedy stuff. "No, not that one, stupid. The gun, you idiot." "Oh yeah, Swinger always carries this, daddy." So he has the gun in one hand, he has the condom in the other, and that was all the proof they needed to bring him to Wrestler's Court. He was going to go down for it. Every piece of evidence pointed at Swinger, and he was just oblivious to realize how bad it looked. He just thought everything was, "Yeah, he's Magnum, daddy. I've always got this Magnum. It's smoking gun." But then Johnny Bravo walks out of nowhere and points at Larry D and says he's the one who did it. And
oh my God. Tommy Dreamer needs to be in every Hall of Fame ever just for still being able to be around everywhere in 2020. That is, God bless that man.
When it comes to Tommy Dreamer, I think they found the proper role for him in this age. He's not going to be winning any title in Impact, but he still brings a charisma that is and a veteran instinct. I know we hear about that from JR, but it's really amazing to see how we can carry a segment like Wrestler's Court or Wrestle House with all he's not known as the most charismatic guy, but his veteran instincts to be charismatic is unmatched except for Swinger. Swinger is just amazing. He
has always been a consistently reliable go-to guy. That's the best thing you can say about Tommy Dreamer. If you need someone in a spot, he's going to go out there. He's going to do his shtick. He's going to get over every single time. He's other than that time he said he wanted to kill Paul Heyman during WrestleMania or something like that.
That was a bit
very likable guy. So I'm sure he can't believe right now that Johnny Swinger is the most over ECW vet of these days. That's just I can't believe it either. But I remember when they signed Swinger, I think we were all like, what in the world are you doing? And
just another Don Callis ECW friend that he wanted to hire for, one of his buddies.
I knew what I was doing, kid.
Yeah.
I had it all. I knew it all along.
The Swing Daddy steals the show. So with that in mind, this is Joe Martel signing off here with the cult icon, who's very excited for Dynamite tomorrow night.
Yep. And before we go, sure. I'm also very excited for two things on Dark tonight.
Oh.
The return of Shauna.
Okay.
He's back. And Evilise versus Lindsay Snow.
Boom, you got my attention now. You definitely, when it comes to Lindsay Snow, you will get my attention. And that sounds like a very Joe Martel type match.
Yes. All right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think those two things are going to be very exciting on Dark while I have my dinner. Mm-hmm. I'm going to, hopefully try to catch the NWA thing at some point. But obviously, the biggest thing, it's tomorrow night.
Yeah.
And we'll get to talk about it all next week and the follow-up to that. And hey, it's always great when we have these things, regardless of the promotion, because it's always exciting. Everybody, there's a festive mood in the air. It's just going to be a great time, barring, somebody breaking their leg or something in the first 2 minutes. Then
it's not Matt Hardy in the match or Jeff Hardy after what I saw on Raw last week. So,
poor Jeff.
Oh. The Hardys going through tables in 2020 just shouldn't be happening, apparently. I think...
Well, not near the ring steps, at least.
Maybe steps or near concrete.
Yeah, now that you bring that up, this is now the second time there's been a thing with the table, and it hasn't been set up properly, and they're both landing on their friggin' heads. I'm stunned Sammy Guevara was not blamed for this one, too.
Well, it's not WWE booking it. Vince McMahon would have blamed the rookie that he probably didn't like, who's undersized, but Tony Khan, we know the way that anyone who saw that knew that Matt Hardy just misplaced his dive and fell wrong on that table, and it shouldn't have been done on the concrete.
Everybody except the doctor, which unfortunately was the most important person.
Oh, man.
It's good we can laugh about this now because Matt isn't dead and is fine. If he was, I would be a terrible person just now for my reaction.
You're still a terrible person, but not for that reason. And on that note, is there anything you want to plug related to Lucha Central? You are the expert.
Oh man, I forget, unfortunately, the name of the show, but we're gonna have Tejano Jr. on one of the podcasts this week, and hopefully he did not listen to us last week when we were very, very nice to him.
I said he was a good worker.
That's true, you did, so he'll be mad at me then. And he'll be on Triple Mania and such, but we have the Triple Mania card is out, but we have a week. We can discuss that next week. That can be a big thing next week. So that we have that coming up. I will be reviewing Dark. It'll be out probably around the time this podcast is out. I'm generally pretty funny, so you might enjoy it. I was going to review CMLL from this past Friday, but the stream didn't work, so I didn't see that show. I heard it was fine.
Okay. Is there anything else? Because if you could tell, I'm doing the I gotta go to the washroom dance.
That's it. We're good. You can get going. We're all set.
Coincidentally, for those who don't know, I work as a drug and alcohol technician, so I have to use urine collection cups all the time. These ones sponsored by Slurm. Slurm is our sponsor here on Lucha Central. I forgot the name of our own show, The Decline of Wrestling Civilization. I am Joe Martel.
Your product placement is bad, and we should feel bad.
Eric Mutter, once again, thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.